The private
Let's be
VIP
clear.
room
There is no
inside
room for
Silver
doubt
Lotus
here.
Dining was sealed off
Betrayal
from
will
the
not be
rest of the
tolerated.
restaurant, but the tension inside it felt heavy enough to leak through the walls. Soft golden lights reflected off polished wood panels. The table was long, expensive, and untouched. No one was there to eat. At the head of the table sat Kong Jae-won. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. His presence alone was enough to make men forget how to breathe. Jae-won was 27 years old, but he carried himself like someone who had been feared for decades. His black suit was perfectly fitted, his posture relaxed, his face calm in a way that was far more terrifying than anger. His eyes were cold, steady, and unblinking. In front of him stood Park Dae-sung. The man was shaking. Sweat rolled down his temples, even though the room was cool. His knees trembled as if they might give out at any moment. He had been dragged into this room less than 10 minutes ago, and already his life felt like it was ending. Around them stood 6 men, all dressed in dark suits. They were Jae-won's lieutenants, loyal members of the Kong Syndicate. Each one stood casually, but their hands rested close to hidden weapons. None of them spoke. None of them needed to. The silence itself was a threat. "You borrowed money," Jae-won said quietly. Park Dae-sung swallowed hard. "Why, yes, sir." "You signed a contract," Jae-won continued, his tone even, almost bored. "You missed the deadline. Then you missed the extension." "I needed more time," Park blurted out. "My business failed. I swear I was going to pay." Jae-won raised one finger. Park froze instantly, his mouth snapping shut. The room went even quieter. Jae-won leaned back slightly in his chair, crossing his legs. "Excuses don't interest me," he said. "Results do." He leaned forward just enough for Park to feel the weight of his gaze. "You have 3 days." Park's eyes widened in panic. 3 days to return what you owe," Jae-won continued, his voice dropping lower. "Or." The door opened. The sound was soft, almost polite. Every head in the room turned. A young woman stepped inside, balancing a serving tray with steady hands. She did not flinch. She did not stop. She did not look confused, frightened, or apologetic for interrupting something that was clearly not meant to be interrupted. She simply walked in. Her name was Lydia Moore. Her dark skin glowed under the warm lighting. Her natural hair was pulled back into a neat bun, simple and elegant. She wore the standard uniform of Silver Lotus Dining, but the way she carried herself made it look refined, almost regal. She scanned the room calmly, as if assessing where to place the glasses. Then her eyes met Kong Jae-won's. She did not look away. She did not lower her gaze. She did not bow. For the first time in his life, Jae-won froze. The words on his tongue vanished. His heart, which had been steady and cold for years, slammed hard against his ribs. The world seemed to slow down. The threat he was about to finish died silently in his throat. Lydia walked forward, completely unfazed by the armed men, the trembling debtor, or the dangerous air filling the room. She placed water glasses on the table with smooth, practiced movements. Her calm was unsettling. She stopped briefly beside Jae-won, setting a glass near his hand. Their eyes met again. Up close, he noticed her eyes were warm brown, steady and observant. There was no fear in them, no curiosity about who he was, no interest in his power. She looked at him the way someone looked at another human being. Nothing more, nothing less. Something inside him cracked. Lydia shifted her attention back to the room, her voice clear and even. "Good evening, gentlemen," she said politely. "May I take your drink orders?" No one answered. Park Dae-sung looked between her and Jae-won, his terror deepening. He was certain this interruption would end badly, for someone. Jae-won could not speak. This made no sense. He had broken men with a glance. He had sentenced people to ruin without raising his voice. Yet this woman had walked into his space, met his eyes, and turned him into silence. One of the lieutenants cleared his throat carefully. "We haven't decided yet," the man said. Lydia nodded, unbothered. "Of course. I'll give you a few minutes." She placed the last glass on the table and turned to leave. Jae-won watched her. The way her shoulders were straight, the confidence in her stride, the complete absence of fear. She did not look back. The door closed softly behind her. The room remained frozen for several seconds. "Boss," one of the men finally said. Jae-won blinked. The world snapped back into focus. He looked at Park Dae-sung again. The man was pale, barely standing. Jae-won stood slowly, straightening his jacket. "Get out," he said. Park stared at him in disbelief. "Yes, sir." "You have your 3 days," Jae-won repeated. "Leave." Park did not question it. He turned and ran, nearly tripping over himself as he fled the room. The lieutenants exchanged confused looks. This was not like J1. He never delayed consequences. He never showed mercy. Something had gone wrong, or something had changed. J1 remained standing, his eyes fixed on the door Lydia had exited through. "Who is she?" he asked quietly. His head of security hesitated. "The waitress?" "I'm not sure, boss." J1 turned, his expression unreadable. "Find out," he said. "Everything." The men nodded immediately. As the room emptied, J1 sat back down, his thoughts no longer on debts, contracts, or power. All he could see was a woman who had walked into his world and made it stop. For the first time in his life, Kong J1 realized something terrifying. Money did not impress her. Fear did not touch her. And his power meant nothing at all. Dinner at Silver Lotus Dining continued, but the room no longer felt the same. The table that had moments ago been filled with fear now sat under a strange, uneasy silence. The debtor was gone. The threat had ended without blood, without shouting, without punishment. Yet no one spoke about it. All attention was now on the young woman who had unknowingly disrupted everything. Lydia Moore returned to the VIP room with menus, her expression calm and professional. She moved with quiet confidence, as if the presence of powerful men meant nothing more than another shift at work. She handed menus to the lieutenants first, offering polite smiles. Then she stopped beside Kong J1. "Good evening," she said evenly. "May I take your order, sir?" Her voice was steady, respectful but not careful. J1 looked up at her. Up close, she smelled faintly of cocoa butter and something soft and floral. His chest tightened for reasons he did not understand. "I'll have the seared tuna," he said after a pause. "Well done." Lydia's pen stopped. The air in the room shifted instantly. Everyone knew what that pause meant. No one questioned Kong J1. Not his men. Not business partners. Not enemies. Certainly not a waitress. Slowly, Lydia lifted her eyes to meet his. "I'm sorry, sir," she said calmly, "but our chef doesn't prepare that dish well done. It's meant to be served rare. Cooking it through would ruin the texture." Silence crashed down on the room. One of the lieutenants stiffened. Another glanced toward J1, waiting for the explosion. This was disrespect. Public, undeniable disrespect. J1 felt something unexpected. Not anger. Interest. For the first time, someone had told him no without fear, apology, or explanation beyond simple fact. "What would you recommend instead?" he asked quietly. The men froze. Lydia didn't hesitate. "If you prefer your fish fully cooked," she said, "the grilled sea bass is a better option. Or the braised short rib. It's tender and very popular." J1 stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, a faint smile touched his lips. "The short rib," he said. Lydia nodded and wrote it down. "Excellent choice." She continued taking orders as if nothing unusual had happened. Dinner was served. Throughout the meal, Lydia moved in and out of the VIP room with ease. She refilled water glasses, cleared plates, and checked on the table just like she would for any other guests. She did not linger. She did not flirt. She did not treat J1 differently. That was what unsettled him the most. Other women tried too hard. They smiled wider, spoke softer, laughed faster. They made themselves smaller in his presence. Lydia did none of that. She spoke to him the same way she spoke to his men. Polite, professional, distant. J1 barely tasted his food. Each time she entered the room, his attention followed her without effort. The way she stood straight. The way she listened carefully before responding. The way she never once glanced at his watch, his clothes, or the men around him. When the meal ended, J1 reached into his wallet. He placed several bills on the table. Far more than the bill required. An amount that could cover rent for weeks. His men noticed but said nothing. Lydia returned to collect the plates. Her eyes briefly flicked to the money, then back to her task. "Thank you," she said politely. "Have a good evening." She did not touch the cash. J1 and his men stood and left the restaurant. Outside, the night air was cool. 3 black luxury cars waited near the entrance. J1 paused. "You go ahead," he said to his security. "I'll be there shortly." His head of security hesitated. "Boss, I'm fine." Reluctantly, the cars drove off. J1 leaned against his vehicle and waited. 10 minutes later, Lydia stepped outside. She walked quickly, holding the stack of bills in her hand. She stopped a few feet away from him and extended the money. "Sir," she said, "I believe you made a mistake." J1 glanced at the bills. No mistake. The bill was much less than this. I know. She frowned slightly.
There's
I
no
can't
mistake.
accept
Your
it.
service was
Why
excellent.
not?
Your tip is
It's
excessive.
too much.
I can afford it.
I can
Hope
afford
you
it.
don't ask for something
Her
in
eyes
return.
hardened.
No.
That's not the point, she said. Either you're trying to show off, or you expect something in return. I'm not interested in either. The words hit harder than any threat he had ever heard. I expect nothing, Jae-won said honestly. You may think that, Lydia replied, placing the bills back into his hand. But money always comes with expectations. I didn't do anything special. I just did my job. Their fingers brushed for a brief second. Jae-won felt electricity run through him. If you enjoyed your meal, she continued, a normal tip would have been fine. Good night, sir. She turned and walked away. Across the street, she stood at the bus stop, waiting like any other person finishing a long shift. Jae-won watched her. A woman who had just refused a small fortune. A woman who did not care who he was. A woman who chose public transport over his money. The bus arrived. She boarded without looking back. Jae-won stood alone in the parking lot, holding the rejected cash. In that moment, something shifted inside him. She had rejected his money. She had rejected his status. And somehow, that made him want her more than anything he had ever wanted in his life. For the first time, Kang Jae-won realized the truth. He had found the one thing he could not buy. And it terrified him. Morning light poured through the wide glass windows of Kang Jae-won's penthouse office, but he barely noticed it. He stood near the window, hands in his pockets, looking down at the city below without really seeing it. His thoughts were still stuck on the night before. On the calm voice. The steady eyes. The woman who had returned his money and walked away like his name meant nothing. A quiet knock came at the door. Come in, Jae-won said. Seo Jin-tae, his head of security, stepped inside carrying a thin tablet. He hesitated for a moment, studying his boss's expression. He had worked for Jae-won for over a decade and had never seen him this distracted. You asked me to find information on the waitress, Seo said carefully. Jae-won turned slowly. Yes. Seo tapped the tablet and began reading. Her name is Lydia Moore. She's an American exchange student, 22 years old. Jae-won's eyes sharpened. Go on. She's in her final year at Hanul National University, majoring in international business. Top of her class. That caught Jae-won's attention. She works 3 jobs, Seo continued. Morning tutoring elementary students in English. Weekend shifts at a clothing store near Unhwa Plaza. Night shifts at Silver Lotus Dining. Jae-won frowned slightly. 3 jobs. Yes, sir. She pays her tuition and living expenses herself. Seo paused before adding. She also sends money home. About 40% of her income. Jae-won felt something tighten in his chest. Family. Single mother. 2 younger siblings. Her father has been in prison for several years. Why? Loan sharks, Seo said. Bad decisions. Tried to take shortcuts. It destroyed their finances. Jae-won looked away toward the window again. No dating history, Seo continued. None that we could find. No parties. No nightlife. Her schedule is strict. Classes from morning to noon. Work until late. Studies until early morning. How much sleep does she get? Jae-won asked quietly. Seo hesitated. 4 to 5 hours on average. Silence filled the room. She's exhausted, Seo added. But her attendance record is perfect. Professors speak highly of her. She's disciplined, focused, completely goal-oriented. Seo lowered the tablet. That's everything. Jae-won said nothing for a long moment. Most background checks bored him. They were predictable. Greed, ambition, weakness. Lydia Moore was none of those things. She wasn't struggling because she was careless. She was working herself to the bone because she refused to fail. Thank you, Jae-won said finally. You can go. After Seo left, Jae-won remained standing, his thoughts heavier than before. She hadn't rejected his money because she was proud. She had rejected it because it threatened everything she had built on her own. That night, Jae-won returned to Silver Lotus Dining. Alone. No entourage. No closed-off VIP room. He sat at a regular table and requested Lydia's section. When she approached, her expression remained professional, though her eyes flickered with brief recognition. Good evening, she said. Welcome back. No warmth. No coldness. Just courtesy. The food was excellent last night, Jae-won said. I thought I'd try something else. She nodded. What would you like? He ordered. She wrote it down. Nothing more. Dinner passed quietly. Over the next few nights, Jae-won returned again. And again. Always alone. Always polite. Always leaving exactly 15% on the table. No more. No less. Lydia noticed. She didn't comment, but she stopped watching him with suspicion. Small conversations formed naturally. "What are you studying?" he asked one evening. "International business," she replied. "Final year." "That's not easy." "No," she agreed. "But it's worth it." "Why that field?" She thought for a moment. "I want to help small businesses grow without exploiting people. Ethical growth. Sustainable practices." It wasn't a rehearsed answer. It was a dream. Jae-won listened. He learned she loved old jazz music, that she missed her mother's cooking, that she dreamed of opening her own consulting firm one day. She never asked him about his life, never pried, never tried to impress. That restraint pulled him in deeper. One quiet evening, after she brought his check, Jae-won took a breath. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" he asked. "When you're not working." Lydia paused. She didn't smile. She didn't look flattered. "I appreciate the offer," she said gently, "but I don't have time for socializing. Not even an hour." She shook her head. "Especially not an hour. Every hour counts right now." Her voice wasn't cold. It was honest. "I'm sorry," she added. She walked away. Jae-won sat there staring at the table. He wasn't angry. He was unsettled. No woman had ever refused him because she was too busy building her future. As the days passed, the rejection didn't fade. It grew. Not into resentment. Into fixation. He thought about her discipline, her exhaustion, her refusal to bend. She wasn't running from him. She simply had no space for distractions. And for the first time in his life, Kang Jae-won wanted to be worthy of someone who didn't need him at all. That realization stayed with him long after he left the restaurant. And it changed everything. For the first time in his life, Kang Jae-won did not know how to wait. Days passed after Lydia refused his invitation for coffee, and the silence bothered him more than any threat ever had. He told himself he was being patient, that he was respecting her priorities, but the truth was simpler and uglier. He was not used to being shut out. In Jae-won's world, problems were solved with resources. If time failed, money worked. If money failed, influence followed. And if influence failed, fear finished the job. So when restraint became uncomfortable, he returned to what he knew best. The handbag arrived at Silver Lotus Dining on a quiet afternoon. It was elegant, expensive, and unmistakably luxurious. A brand that required no explanation. Inside the bag was a small card with only 4 words written neatly. "For someone who deserves beautiful things." No name. No signature. But Lydia knew. She found the package after her shift, waiting in the staff office. Her stomach tightened the moment she saw it. She didn't open it immediately. She already knew what it was and who it came from. She carried it straight to Madame Choi, the restaurant manager. "Someone sent this to me," Lydia said calmly. "I can't accept it." Madame Choi looked uncomfortable. "It's from a valued customer. Many staff would be grateful." "I'm not," Lydia replied. "Please return it." Madame Choi hesitated. "Lydia, if this happens again," Lydia said firmly, "I will quit." There was no anger in her voice. Just certainty. The bag was returned the next morning. Jae-won received it in his office with a folded note tucked inside. "I earn my own way. Please respect that." He read it once. Then again. Something twisted in his chest. Seo Jin-tae stood across from him, arms crossed. "Boss, you should stop." Jae-won didn't look up. "Stop what?" "This," Seo said carefully. "You're pushing." She doesn't respond to money or gifts. Every move is making things worse. Jae-won closed the note slowly. "You don't understand." Seo sighed. "No, boss. You don't." Jae-won ignored him. Over the next few days, the attempts continued. Flowers arrived at the restaurant. Lydia sent them back. A delivery was arranged to her apartment. Her roommate returned it unopened. Indirect help followed. Small things. Quiet gestures meant to ease her load. She noticed every one of them, and rejected all of them. No explanations. No arguments. Just distance. Each refusal chipped away at Jae-won's patience. Not because she was cruel, but because she was unmoved. That was when the idea formed. If she wouldn't let him help her willingly, maybe he could show her his value another way. Maybe she needed to see him act. To see him protect her. To need him. The plan was simple. Too simple. One of his men would pretend to be a thief near her campus. A quick scare. Nothing dangerous. Jae-won would intervene. End of story. He convinced himself it was harmless. He was wrong. The night air was cool as Lydia walked toward the bus stop, her bag slung over her shoulder. Her head was slightly bowed, focused, tired from another long day. A man stepped into her path. "Hey," he said, reaching for her bag. Lydia reacted instantly. She sprayed him in the face before his hand fully extended. The man screamed, staggering back. In the same motion, Lydia swept his legs out from under him, pinned him to the ground, and twisted his arm behind his back. Her movements were sharp, efficient, trained. The man cried out in pain. "Don't move," Lydia said coldly, already pulling out her phone. Jae-won was still getting out of his car when she looked up. Their eyes met. Understanding hit her immediately. Her expression changed. From focus, to realization, to disappointment so deep it felt like a physical blow. "Really?" she said. Jae-won stopped walking. "You thought I wouldn't notice?" Lydia continued, standing and releasing the groaning man. "His shoes cost more than my rent. He hesitated before touching my bag. Real criminals don't hesitate." People had begun to gather. Phones were out. Whispers spread. "You staged this," she said flatly. Jae-won opened his mouth. No words came. "You think I need saving?" Lydia asked, her voice rising. "You think I'll fall into your arms if you manufacture danger?" The man crawled away, humiliated and still coughing. "I grew up learning how to protect myself," Lydia continued. "Not because it was fun, because it was necessary." She stepped closer to Jae-won. "You've been trying to make me need you since the day we met," she said. "Money, gifts, help I didn't ask for. And now this." Her eyes burned. "You don't respect me. You want control." "That's not." "Yes, it is," she interrupted. "And I'm done." She turned and walked away. Jae-won did not follow. He stood there, surrounded by strangers, feeling smaller than he ever had. For the first time, the truth was clear. He hadn't impressed her. He hadn't protected her. He had insulted her. And in doing so, Kang Jae-won finally understood he had crossed a line he could not erase. Kang Jae-won did not return to Silver Lotus Dining. Not the next night. Not the night after that. Not for weeks. For the first time since meeting Lydia Moore, he did exactly what she had demanded. He stayed away. The silence was unbearable. Every evening, his body moved on instinct toward the familiar roads, toward the restaurant he now associated with her presence. Every time, he forced himself to turn away. He told himself this was respect, that this was what she wanted, but the truth was harder. Staying away did not make things better. It made everything else fall apart. At the headquarters of the Kong Syndicate, meetings dragged on longer than usual. Numbers blurred together. Territory disputes that once excited him now felt meaningless. His lieutenants noticed first. "Boss," one of them said during a strategy meeting, "we need your decision." Jae-won blinked. "What?" They exchanged uneasy looks. This was not the man they followed. Shipments were delayed. Negotiations stalled. Jae-won signed documents without reading them. He stared at reports without absorbing a single word. For the first time, power felt heavy instead of satisfying. One afternoon, his father summoned him. Kang Hyun-suk sat behind a wide desk, his posture straight, his expression sharp. He had ruled the syndicate before Jae-won and expected his son to rule after him without hesitation. "You've been distracted," his father said. "I'm fine," Jae-won replied. "You're not," Kang Hyun-suk snapped. "You're careless, emotional, and I know why." Jae-won said nothing. "That girl," his father continued. "The American." Jae-won's jaw tightened. "You will forget her," Kang Hyun-suk ordered. "She is a weakness, and weakness gets men killed." Jae-won finally looked up. "She's not a weakness. She has you questioning everything," his father said coldly. "Your judgment, your loyalty, your future." Jae-won exhaled slowly. Maybe that's not a bad thing. The room went quiet. Kang Hyun-suk stared at his son in disbelief. "What did you say?" "I don't like who I've become," Jae-won said. The words surprised even him. "I don't like this life." His father stood abruptly. "This life is who you are." "No," Jae-won replied quietly. "It's who I was taught to be." The older man's eyes hardened. "You are throwing away everything your family built." "Maybe," Jae-won said. "Or maybe I'm finally choosing something for myself." Kang Hyun-suk shook his head. "Then you are a fool." The conversation ended without resolution. That night, Jae-won sat alone in his penthouse, staring at the city lights. The silence pressed in on him from all sides. Without Lydia, without distraction, without purpose, he was forced to face something he had avoided his entire life. Who was he without power? He had been groomed since childhood to lead, to intimidate, to control. Every decision he had ever made fit into that identity. And now, for the first time, it felt hollow. The next day, he made a call. "Kong Du-yun," he said when his cousin answered. "I need to talk." They met privately. "I want you to start taking over some responsibilities," Jae-won said. Gradually. Du-yun frowned. "Why?" "Because I need space," Jae-won replied. "To figure out who I am without this." "You're serious," Du-yun said slowly. "Yes." Du-yun studied him for a long moment. "This isn't like you." "I know," Jae-won said. "That's the point." As Jae-won began stepping back, the weight of his choices settled heavily on his shoulders. He felt unanchored, lost. Meanwhile, Lydia Moore's world was collapsing in a different way. She sat across from an administrator at Hanoi National University, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "There are irregularities with your visa," the man said carefully. "A formal complaint has been filed." Lydia felt her stomach drop. "What kind of complaint?" "It claims you've exceeded your permitted work hours," he said, "and that you accepted substantial gifts from a Korean national." "That's not true," Lydia said immediately. "I have records for every shift, and I've never accepted gifts." "I understand," he replied, "but we are required to investigate." "What happens if you find a violation?" she asked, her voice tight. "Your visa could be revoked," he said. "You may be required to leave the country." The words hit her like a physical blow. "Who filed the complaint?" Lydia asked. "I'm not at liberty to say." But Lydia already knew. Clara Whitmore, the classmate who sneered at scholarship students. The one who whispered about fairness when Lydia topped every class ranking. The one who had made it clear she resented anyone who worked their way forward. Lydia left the office in a daze. Deportation. Everything she had worked for, her degree, her sacrifices, her future, could vanish because of lies. She looked into legal aid options. The waiting list was months long. Private lawyers were far beyond her budget. Her mother couldn't help. The family was barely staying afloat. For the first time since arriving in Korea, Lydia felt truly helpless. She sat alone in her small apartment that night, staring at her neatly organized schedule, her textbooks, her work uniforms. All her discipline, all her effort, and it still might not be enough. She pressed her forehead against the window, fighting tears. She had faced exhaustion before. Poverty. Isolation. But this was fear. Real fear. And for the first time, Lydia Moore did not know how to solve her problem on her own. While Jae-won questioned who he was without power, Lydia faced the terrifying reality of losing everything she had built. Both of them stood at the edge of something breaking, and neither knew what would come next. Kong Jae-won made the decision in the quiet hours before dawn. He had not slept. For days, the image of Lydia Moore sitting alone in a university office replayed in his mind, though he had never been there to see it. He imagined her steady hands finally shaking, her careful plans unraveling because of lies she did not deserve. He told himself he was doing the right thing. He told himself he could not stand by and watch her life collapse when he had the power to stop it. So he made the calls. They were quick, controlled, efficient. A conversation with an official at the Korean Residency Bureau. A reminder of past favors. A quiet pressure applied where pressure worked best. The investigation was closed within 48 hours. No violations found. No further action required. Visa status confirmed. Jae-won stared at the final message on his phone for a long time. Relief washed over him. Then fear followed immediately after. He knew what he had done, and he knew Lydia had never asked for it. That evening, Jae-won returned to Silver Lotus Dining for the first time in weeks. He came alone. No bodyguards. No reserved room. No expensive watch. He wore a simple dark sweater and jeans, clothes that made him look almost ordinary. But nothing about his presence was ordinary to Lydia. She was wiping down a nearby table when she sensed him before she saw him. Her body stiffened. She turned. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, neither of them moved. "Good evening," Lydia said finally, her voice formal. "What can I get for you?" "Tea," Jae-won said quietly. "Green tea." She wrote it down without comment and turned away. He watched her walk back toward the counter, the distance between them feeling heavier than ever. When she returned with the tea, he spoke again. "Lydia, please," he said softly. "I need to talk to you." She paused. "Now is not a good time." "It's important." She hesitated, then nodded once. "Say what you need to say." Jae-won took a breath. "I know about your visa situation. The color drained from her face. How? She asked sharply. I have connections, he said. Things like this come to me. Her eyes hardened. What did you do? J1 hesitated. Then he told the truth. I ended the investigation. The world seemed to tilt. You what? Lydia whispered. I couldn't let them deport you, he said quickly. I couldn't watch everything you worked for disappear because of lies. You didn't answer my question, she said, her voice trembling. What did you do? I used my influence, J1 admitted. The complaint was withdrawn. The case is closed. For a moment, Lydia said nothing. Then something inside her broke. You had no right, she said. I was trying to protect you. I didn't ask for protection, she snapped. I didn't ask for help. You were about to lose everything. And that was my battle, she shouted. Heads turned in the dining room. Mine. J1 stood. Lydia, listen to me. No, she said sharply. You listen to me. Her hands were shaking now, her carefully controlled calm completely gone. You took my choice away, she said. Do you understand that? I didn't get to fight. I didn't get to prove I could stand on my own. I saved you, J1 said. No, she replied. You controlled me. The word hit him like a blade. I grew up watching my family fall apart because someone thought they knew what was best for us, Lydia continued, tears burning in her eyes. My father made deals without telling anyone. He thought he was protecting us. He destroyed us. J1 tried to speak. She cut him off. You don't get to decide my life just because you have power, she said. You don't get to fix me like I'm broken. Her voice cracked. Get out, she whispered. Lydia, get out of this restaurant, she said louder. And get out of my life. The room was silent. J1 looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw the damage he had done. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Then he turned and walked out. The door closed behind him. Lydia stood frozen for several seconds. Then her knees gave out. Madame Choi rushed to her side, guiding her into the back office. Sit down, dear. Lydia collapsed into a chair, covering her face as sobs tore out of her chest. She was angry. She was hurt. But worst of all, she was grieving, because a part of her had hoped he would be different. That night, Lydia lay awake in her apartment, staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed near midnight. A message from an unknown number. I know you told me to stay away. I will. But I need you to have this. An attachment followed. Hands shaking, Lydia opened it. It was everything. Call logs. Emails. Records of pressure applied. Proof that the investigation had been closed through influence, not fairness. At the bottom of the message. If you want to reopen the case and fight it yourself, you can. The choice is yours. It always should have been. Lydia stared at the screen for a long time. She could undo everything. Risk deportation. Prove she could win on her own. Or she could let it stand. Her chest tightened with conflicting emotions. Relief. Anger. Gratitude. Resentment. She didn't forward the files. She didn't delete them either. She locked her phone and lay back, tears sliding silently down her temples. For the first time, Lydia more understood how complicated choice could be. And for the first time, Kong Jae-won had done something that wasn't about control. He had given it back. Whether she could forgive him for taking it in the first place was a question she was not ready to answer. But the battle inside her had begun. Lydia Moore was halfway through reorganizing her notes when her phone rang. She almost ignored it. Her mind had been scattered for days, caught between anger and exhaustion, relief and guilt. Sleep came in short, broken pieces. Every quiet moment brought back Jae-won's voice, his apology, the documents he had sent her, and the choice he had placed back into her hands. The phone rang again. She glanced at the screen. Mom. Lydia answered immediately. Hey, Mom. Her mother's voice came through bright and trembling at the same time. Lydia, baby, are you sitting down? Lydia frowned. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, her mother said quickly. Nothing bad. I have news. Lydia's chest tightened. Okay, tell me. There was a pause. Then her mother laughed through tears. Your brother got it. He got the scholarship. Lydia froze. What? A full scholarship, her mother said, voice shaking. Tuition, housing, everything. He's going to college, Lydia. We don't have to worry anymore. Lydia sank onto her bed. Oh my God. And there's more, her mother continued. Your sister, she got accepted into that art program. The one she's been dreaming about. They're giving her a stipend, too. Lydia pressed a hand to her mouth as tears filled her eyes. They're going to be okay, her mother said softly. We're going to be okay. Lydia couldn't speak for a moment. All the late nights. all the exhaustion, all the money sent home instead of saved. It mattered. I'm so proud of you, her mother said. You showed them what's possible. You carried this family when things were falling apart. I didn't do it alone, Lydia whispered. I know, her mother replied gently. But you led the way. They talked for a while longer about plans, about excitement, about hope. When the call ended, Lydia sat in silence, tears sliding down her face. For the first time in days, she smiled. Her sacrifices had not been meaningless. That evening, Lydia returned to Silver Lotus Dining for her shift. The restaurant was quieter than usual. She moved through her work automatically, her mind still heavy but steadier than before. Near the end of the night, Madame Choi approached her. Lydia, she said carefully, there's someone here to see you. Lydia stiffened. Who? Madame Choi hesitated. He says he's Kong Jae-won's father. The air seemed to leave the room. I didn't agree to see anyone, Lydia said. I know, Madame Choi replied gently. But he's already here. Lydia took a slow breath. Fine. She followed Madame Choi to a quiet VIP room. An older man stood near the window when Lydia entered. His posture was straight, his expression sharp and controlled. His eyes were the same dark, penetrating eyes she had seen on his son, but colder. Kang Hyun-suk turned as she stepped inside. So, he said, you're Lydia Moore. Yes, Lydia replied evenly. What do you want? He studied her for a long moment. You're not afraid. I've been threatened before, she said. You don't scare me. A faint, humorless smile touched his lips. I can see why my son is distracted. Lydia crossed her arms. If you're here to intimidate me, you're wasting your time. I'm not here to threaten you, Kang Hyun-suk said. I'm here to warn you. About what? About the cost of what you're doing. Lydia met his gaze. I didn't ask your son to do anything. And yet, he said, he is stepping away from the syndicate. From his position. From his future as it was meant to be. Lydia's breath caught. He didn't tell me that. He wouldn't, Kang Hyun-suk replied. Because he doesn't want to burden you. The room felt suddenly smaller. He is dismantling years of preparation, Kang Hyun-suk continued. He has transferred responsibilities. He is pulling back. All because of you. Lydia shook her head. That's his choice. Yes, Kang Hyun-suk agreed. And choices have consequences. What are you saying? Lydia asked. I am saying this, he replied calmly. If you walk away from him now, if you break him after he has torn his life apart, you will leave him with nothing. Lydia felt a knot tighten in her chest. You think I'm trying to destroy him? No, Kang Hyun-suk said. I think you're strong enough to do it without trying. She bristled. I didn't ask him to change. I know, he said. That's what makes this dangerous. He stepped closer. My son has never questioned his path before. You made him do that. Whether you stay or leave, that damage is done. Lydia swallowed hard. You should understand, he continued, what kind of power you hold. I don't want power, Lydia said. I believe you, Kang Hyun-suk replied. That's why I'm not stopping you. And why I'm not threatening you. He turned toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, he added, you have strength. Real strength. My world values fear. Yours values effort. I can respect that. He glanced back at her. Just be sure you're ready to live with the outcome of whatever you choose. Then he left. Lydia stood alone in the room, her heart racing. Jae-won wasn't pretending. He wasn't posturing. He was truly walking away. That realization changed everything. Later that night, Lydia sat on her bed, phone in her hands. She stared at the screen for a long time. Then she typed a message. We need to talk. She deleted it. Typed again. Somewhere neutral. No restaurant. No offices. A pause. Then she sent it. A moment later, the reply came. Anywhere you want. Lydia closed her eyes. The choice was no longer abstract. It was real. And for the first time since all of this began, Lydia Moore stepped forward instead of pulling away. The Blue Sparrow Cafe was busy in the quiet way that university cafes usually were. Soft music played in the background. Students sat hunched over laptops, half-empty cups scattered across small wooden tables. It smelled like coffee beans and rain. Lydia Moore arrived 15 minutes early. She ordered a black coffee she barely touched and chose a corner table near the window. Her hands rested around the mug, fingers tightening and loosening as she waited. She had agreed to this meeting, but now that she was here, her heart would not slow down. When the door opened again, she felt it before she saw him. Kang Jae-won stepped inside exactly on time. He looked different. There was no sharp edge to him tonight. No guarded posture. No trace of the man who once filled rooms with fear. He wore simple clothes, his shoulders slightly tense, his eyes tired but focused. When he saw her, relief flickered across his face, quick and unguarded. He approached slowly, as if afraid she might change her mind. "Hi," he said. "Hi," Lydia replied. She gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit." He did. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The clink of cups and quiet voices filled the space between them. Jae-won broke the silence first. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either," Lydia admitted. He nodded, accepting that without argument. "I'll start," Jae-won said quietly. "Because I owe you honesty." Lydia watched him closely. "I was scared," he continued. "Scared of losing you. Scared of being powerless. I've never known how to exist without control, and when you walked away, everything I relied on stopped working." His hands tightened together on the table. "I regret what I did," he said. "Not because you were angry, but because you were right. I took your choice. I crossed a line." Lydia swallowed. "I've spent my whole life believing that if I didn't act, something terrible would happen," he went on. "That hesitation meant weakness. When I heard about your visa situation, I panicked. I didn't think. I just acted." He looked up at her. "And I hurt you." "Yes," Lydia said softly. "You did. I'm not asking you to forgive me," Jae-won said quickly. "I just need you to understand that I know what I did was wrong." She studied his face. There was no defense there. No justification. Just remorse. "You said you were stepping away from the syndicate," Lydia said. "Yes," he replied. "I already started. I've transferred responsibilities. I'm not at the center anymore." "Why?" she asked. Jae-won exhaled slowly. "Because I don't know who I am without it. And I need to find out." He hesitated, then added, "Because I don't want to be the kind of man who thinks control equals care." Lydia looked down at her coffee. "I was angry," she said. "Furious. I felt like everything I'd worked for was taken out of my hands." "I know. But I was also relieved," she admitted quietly. "And that scared me." Jae-won didn't interrupt. "I've been strong for so long," Lydia continued. "Strong because I had to be. When you fixed it, there was this moment where I could breathe. And then I hated myself for that." She looked up at him. "I don't want to need someone. I don't want to be dependent. I don't want you to need me," Jae-won said immediately. "I want you to choose me." That stopped her. They sat with that truth between them. "If we try this," Lydia said carefully, "it has to be different." "Yes," he agreed. "No gifts," she said. "No money. No favors. No solving my problems without asking." "Agreed. No using your power to protect me," she added. "No control disguised as care." "Agreed," he said again, without hesitation. "And if I say no," she continued, "you listen. The first time." Jae-won nodded. "I will." She took a breath. "Slow. Careful. Honest." "Slow," he repeated. "Careful. Honest." A server came by, and Jae-won ordered coffee for himself. When it arrived, he wrapped his hands around the cup like he wasn't quite sure what to do with it. "This feels strange," he admitted. Lydia almost smiled. "That's what normal feels like." He looked at her. "I don't know how to be normal. I don't know how to rely on anyone," she replied. "So maybe we're both learning." They talked for a long time. Not about the syndicate. Not about threats or fear. They talked about school. About exhaustion. About dreams that felt too big and felt too fragile at the same time. Jae-won told her he was terrified of starting over. That without his old role, he felt unsteady, like the ground beneath him had shifted. Lydia told him she was terrified of trusting again. That independence had kept her safe, but it had also kept her alone. When they finally stood to leave, the sky outside had softened into evening. Jae-won walked her to the door. "Coffee again?" he asked carefully. "Sometime. Like this." Lydia considered him. Really looked at him. "This," she said, "we can do." A quiet smile spread across his face. "Then this is enough." They stepped outside, standing on the sidewalk without touching. The city moved around them, unaware that something fragile and real had just begun. Not with power, not with money, but with two people sitting across from each other, choosing honesty instead of fear. The 3 months that followed were not dramatic in the way movies like to pretend growth was. There were no grand speeches, no sudden transformations, no perfect days. There was only effort. For Kang Jae-won, learning to live without fear was like learning to use muscles he had never needed before. He no longer woke up to urgent calls or threats masked as negotiations. Instead, his mornings were quiet, unfamiliar, and unsettling. At first, he didn't know what to do with that silence. Lydia noticed immediately. "You're pacing," she said one morning from her small kitchen. "I always pace," Jae-won replied. "No," she said gently. "You're panicking." He stopped mid-step, surprised. "Sit," she told him, pointing to the chair. He obeyed. This became their rhythm. Lydia taught him ordinary things: how to cook simple meals without burning them, how to separate laundry properly, how to clean without treating it like a military operation. The first time he ruined an entire load of white shirts by washing them with red fabric. Lydia laughed so hard she had to sit down. "You've never done this before," she said between laughs. "I've never needed to," he admitted. "And now I want to." That mattered. But growth wasn't smooth. Jae-won still struggled with control. When Lydia looked tired, his first instinct was to solve it, to hire help, to pay for convenience, to remove obstacles without asking. And Lydia still struggled with independence. When she felt overwhelmed, her instinct was to shut down, to handle everything alone, to push him away even when she needed support. They argued. Not loudly, not cruelly, but honestly. "You don't get to fix everything," Lydia told him one night. "I'm not fixing," he argued. "I'm helping." "You're deciding," she corrected. He went quiet, then nodded. "You're right." Another night, it was Lydia who stopped mid-sentence. "You don't have to carry this alone," Jae-won said carefully. "I know," she replied. "I just forget sometimes." They learned to call each other out without tearing each other down. That was new. During this time, Jae-won made his decision official. He stepped away from the Kong syndicate completely. The announcement was quiet, but the impact was heavy. Leadership passed fully to Kong Do-yeon, who accepted the role with confidence and preparation. There were objections. There were warnings. There were whispers that Jae-won was losing his edge. He didn't respond to any of it. For the first time in his life, he didn't need to. The weight lifted slowly, but when it did, it felt like breathing for the first time after years underwater. Lydia saw the change before anyone else did. "You look lighter," she said one evening. "I feel empty," he admitted. She smiled. "That's just space. You'll fill it with something better." Meanwhile, Lydia pushed toward graduation with relentless focus. Finals came and went. Presentations stacked on top of deadlines. Jae-won sat with her in cafes, listening as she practiced arguments for her thesis, asking questions, challenging her ideas the way no one else had. "You're too careful here," he said once. "Your data supports a stronger claim." She looked at him, surprised. "You really think so?" "I know so," he replied. "You've earned the confidence to say it." When graduation day arrived, Lydia stood in her cap and gown with her heart pounding. She scanned the crowd. Then she saw him. Jae-won stood near the back, dressed simply, clapping louder than anyone when her name was called. His face was open, proud, unguarded. She graduated at the top of her class. After the ceremony, Lydia introduced Jae-won to her family. Her mother hugged her tightly, tears in her eyes. Her siblings looked at Jae-won with curiosity, then warmth. Later, when Lydia stepped aside, her mother smiled at him. "She's stronger than she knows," her mother said. "I know," Jae-won replied softly. "I've seen it." The choice came soon after. Lydia received job offers, one abroad, one in Korea. The safe option, the familiar option. She thought about it for days. Then she made her decision. "I'm staying," she told Jae-won one evening. His breath caught. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said. "Not because of you. Because this is where my work is. Where I want to build something." He nodded, respect clear in his eyes. "Then I'll build beside you." Jae-won launched Aurora Bridge Consulting quietly. No flashy announcements. No dramatic rebranding. Just a clear mission and honest work. The first client was small. Almost insignificant by his old standards. But it was legitimate. When he secured the contract, he didn't celebrate with champagne or luxury. He came home and told Lydia. "I did it," he said, smiling like someone who couldn't quite believe it. "You earned it," she replied. That night, standing together by the window, the city lights stretching endlessly below them, Jae-won took her hand. "I love you," he said. No fear. No hesitation. Just truth. Lydia turned to him, her eyes soft. "I love you too," she replied. They stood there quietly, not as a crime boss and a waitress, not as power and resistance, but as two people who had chosen something harder than control. They had chosen growth. And that choice changed everything. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories.